I'm sorry, Shane, but this is not my number three.
Oh, this is just another honorable mention for you?
No,
What is up
I
with
am
you,
so
man?
sorry, man.
I told you early, you can't cheat like
I
this.
made a mistake, okay?
I told Brian before this, guys. I told him, I said, dude, do not be piling up all your shows because I know you got a lot of them.
Look, okay,
Right, and here
this is
he
the
is
first
doing
time we've done this. We're using this software with the slideshow thing, and it's
It's
confusing to
okay.
me.
Mixties presents the Popcast.
Hey, my name is Brian, that is Shane, and this is the Popcast, and today we're doing something new. We're doing a top 5 show. I know it's been done. It's all over YouTube. I know. But we're doing it today for our favorite top 5 sci-fi shows. And boy, was this hard. Oh my god, I like a lot of sci-fi TV shows. Shane?
Super hard, super duper hard. I was, I could have kept going. My list of top 20, I could have done top 20 easily. It was tough to call out a top 5, seriously.
Not to mention, like, my 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7s are all so close together that I was having to look up stats to try to determine, a winner for a specific slot.
I chose mostly based on nostalgia. So I stopped, I took a moment to think about it, and I thought, what just makes me feel the best when I watch it?
Yeah.
And that's how I ranked it.
So what I did was when I was having a hard time determining a slot, I would go, how many times have I binge watched this after the fact?
That's true.
And that's what
All of
determined.
them.
All of them, yeah. Okay, before we get into that, guys, don't forget, we mentioned this briefly, but it's set in stone now, people. We're doing a Christmas show. Woo!
The Christmas show.
It'll
Shane and Brian's Christmas show, guys.
Yep, it'll probably be the week of Christmas. Maybe Christmas Eve, somewhere in there, as close to Christmas as we can get. But we're not 100% on the date yet, but it's going to be that close to Christmas, right, Shane?
Right. And basically what we're trying to do here, guys, is this is our chance, this is our opportunity to give to our fans. So what we want to do is you guys send us. It has to be mailed. That's the only trick. You can send us anything you want. Okay, you can send us a poem, something you drew. You can send us a message you want to send to somebody else. You can send us products that you sell. A shout out. This is an opportunity for you to advertise your stuff if you want to.
Yeah,
We're make something. Throw it out there.
You make something and sell it on Etsy. Send it to us, and make sure to give us the link, and we'll promote it for you. Just whatever you got. It says mail crap too, but don't mail actual crap. That'd be great.
Yeah. This is our Christmas show.
Yeah.
So what that means is we're giving back to you guys. So free advertising,
by
free
taking
exposure
stuff from you.
And technically it might end up in a boxing. But the reality is we just want to be able to talk about you guys and celebrate the fact that our little community that we've built here. So send the stuff in. It's got to be mailed, and make sure it gets to us sometime before that first week of before Christmas.
And here's a little fun fact I haven't told Shane yet. I'm building the new studio backs for us that we're gonna have next year. So any artwork you send will be up on the background behind us during our shows.
That would be cool. That would be very cool. I would love to have our fans' artwork behind us.
Okay.
I love the new graphic, man.
Oh yeah, and that's our new T-shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's our new show graphic. It is on a T-shirt. You're right.
Yeah. We're trying to work out something where we can get out a bunch of these T-shirts. We'll let you guys know probably tomorrow. Okay, guys. Let's don't forget our 1,600 subscribers. We're almost there. A couple hundred more, and we get what we need. So get in there, comment, subscribe, and you'll be a part of that big, beautiful, outstanding, outlandish, out of this world, amazing, exciting giveaway.
Yes, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Insert adjective
Tongue
here.
twister.
Yeah. Okay, man. Let's get on with the top 5. Okay. Now we're gonna talk about Shane's top 5 first, and then we're gonna go to my top 5. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare the two and see where, if we overlapped, and why not.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, and like, could be fun for everybody.
So, Shane's.
Are you going to go from the bottom up, or what are you doing? How are you doing this?
I'm going top down, 1 to 5.
Oh.
Should I've gone
there's
5?
There's no drum roll. It's just number 1.
You know what? That's a good point.
It takes a little of the excitement out. Nobody really cares about number 5.
All right, let's go backwards. All right. Shane's number 5.
Hey, guys, I wonder what my number 1 is.
Shane's number 5 was... Shane, this is your list, man. You talk about it.
Well, here's the deal. I sent you the list. I actually had a lot of stuff put on it. But I didn't actually write it down. I sent it to you. So I got to remember what it is that I had here. Because I had a couple other things. It wasn't just Stargate SG-1. It was close for me. There was actually a tie for 5th.
For you, your number 5 tie was SG-1 and Voyager. Star Trek Voyager.
So this was really tough for me because I really, really like both of these shows. Brian turned me on to Stargate SG-1. I was not a big fan of the Stargate movie that came out, but it's like one of his favorite movies. And he's like telling me, listen, man, you got to try the Stargate SG-1. You got to do it. And, you know, I love Richard Dean Anderson. I was a big fan of MacGyver years and years ago. So I tried it, and he was right. I immediately fell in love with the show. Fantastic show. Can't say enough about it. Can't say enough about Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek Voyager is, you know, I've binge watched that one probably 3 times now. I've probably seen my 3 favorite series with Star Trek probably 3 times now. So, you know, every 5 to 7 years, I just go through it all. So, really, really, really love the show. I love that they're out there in the Delta Quadrant, lost. I love science fiction like that.
Awesome. As do I. And it made it to my list. I don't. You know, you're gonna find out where. All right, your number 4 slot was, and I'm confused by this one, Shane. Star Trek: The Next Generation was number 4.
So you gotta understand.
Really?
When Star Trek: The Next Generation came out, I was 14 years old. And I had already been watching the original series since I was a little kid. And when it first came out, I was super highly critical because all of the advertising at the time was Kirk versus Picard, right? And who's this imposter in the captain's chair? And there was all this press surrounding it. And so, yeah, so I always, you know, it was always tough for me. I mean, eventually it got to a place where Star Trek: The Next Generation, I think it was probably when we went into season 3, it became a much loved and greatly loved Star Trek that nowadays I would say I couldn't live without it, you know. So it became that important. The stories that are told in Star Trek: The Next Generation, the captain Jean-Luc Picard he's just right up there with Captain Kirk now as far as favorite captains for me. And my favorite episode of Star Trek of all time actually comes from Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's the episode where Picard lives an entire lifetime when a probe comes to the ship, and he learns to use the flute or the piccolo.
That episode's so deep.
It's my favorite.
That's by far my favorite. The deepest, most profound episodes of television ever.
Yeah, I love it. But the fact that Star Trek: The Next Generation is number 4 speaks volumes to the other shows that are up there for me. So as much as I love and respect this TV show,
it was obviously going to be a little far on your top 5 list when you didn't remember that Ship in the Bottle was Beverly Crusher.
No, listen,
and
man,
Wesley Crusher made a warp bubble, and I didn't even remember either. I remembered more than you though that episode. That's for sure.
Well, here's what's funny is there's a Voyager episode that's actually very similar where people are disappearing. I didn't throw it back at you, but I went and found it.
Oh,
and
is there?
So yeah, and so you know a lot of these are not regurgitated, but some of the ideas are taken for other Star Treks. You even see it on the Orville now.
Yeah,
you know how some of the ideas are taken. So, but you were totally 100% right and got the warp bubble.
So are we gonna have to wait until season 3 of Star Trek Discovery before we like it?
Oh man, I don't know.
You won't get that far if that's the case.
I mean, I liked Voyager in the second season, I really started to like it a lot.
Yeah, my Voyager for me started clicking around the set. It was worth watching season 1, but season 2 is when it picked up for me.
For me, and Star Trek: The Next Generation, they needed to get rid of Tasha Yar.
Oh, I hated Tasha Yar. I hated her.
I was not a fan of hers.
But
so I was glad.
I hated the Kazon more than Tasha Yar. The
Yeah,
Kazon on Voyager they're just the worst race in all of the Star Trek universe. They make no sense. They're like this primitive race that somehow has starships. It's so confusing to me.
Yeah, no, you're right. There was a lot of interesting things. I mean, when the Next Gen really hit its stride, it was just something else. And when it all came together for me, when the movie Generations came out,
yes,
and you had Picard and Kirk together in that movie, that was like sci-fi perfection for me.
It was so good.
I was in a happy place.
Oh, wait till next week, because
happier.
Next Monday we're doing top sci-fi movies.
Ooh, can't wait for that.
Okay. Number 3 on your list was interesting
Number
to me.
3.
Quantum Leap.
I got to tell you. Yes, Quantum Leap came out in the 80s. And I don't know. I want to call this, it's probably not the best science fiction series, but it's a personal it's a personal, what do you want to call it? I can't do without it. It's my, you know what I'm saying? It's a personal love.
I understand.
More than it is a critical love thing. Scott Bakula is one of my favorite television actors. You know, him being in Enterprise was really exciting for me when that TV show came out. He wasn't, to me, as good as he was in this, but Sam Beckett bouncing around time, his own timeline, trying to figure out how to get back to his own time and saving people along the way. It just really spoke to my core. I saw every episode, and right up into the finale, I mean, it had me almost tearing. You know, I was almost, it was an emotional TV show towards the end and not all are like that. There are some shows, like, if you guys remember Magnum PI, it's not sci-fi, but that was a super emotional ending to that TV show. This one was the same way. You really care about this character, and yeah, this is like not something everybody would love, but I personally love Quantum Leap.
Okay, I understand that.
Everybody should go watch it.
I understand that. Now, here's the problem. When we get to my list, you're going to notice a severe lack of anything Scott Bakula. I love Scott Bakula, and I considered Quantum Leap on my top 10, and I considered Enterprise on my top 10, and I considered even that show Chuck, which I love Chuck, my top 10, but I had to realize that Chuck is not science fiction enough to be called science fiction. I can't. It's really hard to put Enterprise up against Voyager in the original series, so I didn't.
It doesn't fit in there. You're
and
right.
Quantum Leap was before my time, so while I saw Quantum Leap, it was always sort of a background noise to me. You know, I was watching Sliders and stuff like that.
And by the way, Sliders is not on the list here, but I totally, it was the same thing. It was not critically acclaimed, but it was my there's a saying for what I'm trying to say here. Basically, it was my personal, love. Nobody else cared about it. Maybe you cared about it.
I liked Sliders. In fact, the reason I didn't like Quantum Leap as much as I probably should have was because Sliders I was watching Sliders and then I watched Quantum Leap, and watching it that way is backwards. And I didn't even put Sliders on my top 10 because there's so many good sci-fi shows I just couldn't.
No, it's tough, but Sliders was one of those shows that I would watch. I would just watch and watch and watch and watch, and you didn't have to be heavily invested in it, but you got a different Earth every time they slid. And it's the same with this. It was a different time every time. And there's just something really warm about those types of shows. And so I would say Sliders was my poor man Quantum Leap.
Yeah,
but, so I
felt like Quantum Leap was my poor man Sliders, and then when Stargate came out, I felt like they just did Sliders so much better. Yeah,
well, partially, yeah, in a way, you're right.
Okay, well, number 2 on your list. What?
Yes.
So Twilight Zone. Shane.
So listen, listen, guys.
If you guys ever want to know how old Shane is, you just figured it out.
Well, you know what? Anybody who watches the Twilight Zone marathon every 4th of July, every Thanksgiving, should be watching the Twilight Zone marathon. The Twilight Zone, and I put the years, I gave them to you. You didn't give me no stuff here. I had it all written down. The Twilight Zone was in the 60s, and all of the shows and the stories that were written by the Twilight Zone were just first of its kind that really came to people to see. And so as time's gone on, some of these stories have been regurgitated, but this is where it was first. This was a series that invoked imagination, that taught us as children to love science fiction. This is where that first real love of science fiction starts to, because every episode's different and there's a different weirdness and reality to it. Rod Serling there was the voice. I mean, it's iconic in our, and I can to this day, you could put Twilight Zone on all day long, and I just episode after episode, I know what they are. Some of the great actors came from the Twilight Zone first. William Shatner was on multiple episodes of the Twilight Zone, and some of the most famous episodes. And so it's really cool to go back and see those actors. And to me personally, from a science fiction standpoint, without the Twilight Zone, and we got to remember that science fiction is more than just being in space.
Yeah,
science fiction is there's a lot more elements to it. And so I think the reason it's number 2 for me is it shaped me and how I feel about science fiction. And it's got and like I said, I chose based on how they made me feel when I thought about them when I closed my eyes.
I understand completely. No, Twilight Zone almost made my list, but instead it was more in my honorable mentions because there's just so much good sci-fi. And, my world's been sort of shaped by sci-fi. My favorite TV has always been sci-fi. Favorite movies have always been sci-fi. That's why I like superheroes movies so much. They sort of fit that sci-fi mold, even though they wouldn't be technically that genre.
Right.
And you're number 1, Shane. You're number 1. You already saw it. Star Trek, the original series.
The show that started it all for me. This was it. This was the show. My mom watched this. I was actually in syndication after I was born, just like the Twilight Zone. I'm not that old.
Right.
But I grew up from the age of about 4 and 5 years old watching this next to my mom. And it just became a thing. And I watched it episode after episode, year after year, from the time I was 4 until it was still syndicating and playing on late night TV, and when I was 17 and 18 years old. And I identified myself with Captain Kirk. He became a male role model for me. And, he was cool, and he was a leader, and he had his flaws, but he was definitely a male role model to look up to for me. And the stories were like nothing you'd ever seen before. You're in space, you're on a voyage. It was like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in space, and mixed with a Western. And the characters I was just, the reason why millions of people love it today, obviously, is why I love it. And when I close my eyes and think about the nostalgia, sure, there were other Star Trek series that were probably done better acting. But in my heart of hearts, this is what started it all. And so this makes it my number 1.
Yeah, I understand. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Star Trek TOS is on my list, but it's not as high as you would think. I loved Star Trek, the original series. Loved it. But I didn't base my list on nostalgia. For me, it was more like what I watched, and I felt like who did it better. And I love TOS. But you're going to see why it's not my number 1. And something else is. Are you guys ready?
All right. We got mine. Let's get yours.
Okay. Here comes my list. Okay, we're starting with my honorable mentions. And by the way, Shane's honorable mentions are also in here. It's the way a slideshow works. It's a little weird. But I wanted to start off because I don't want the comments to be like, Hey, man, what about Babylon 5? You guys didn't even talk about that. Look, it didn't make my top 5 or even my top 10 list because, frankly, in my humble opinion, Deep Space Nine did do it better. The reason they did it better was only because Deep Space Nine was tied to this big universe that I already loved and already was immersed in. I love Babylon 5.
And also,
what's that?
Also, Babylon 5 is currently sitting at number 9 for Ranker.com, best sci-fi television series of all time. And that's got, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 13 or 14,000 votes. So sitting at about 9 all time.
No, it's a good show. But they ran really close together. Babylon 5 and Deep Space Nine ran very similar time. Very similar amount of time in my life. And I was already connected to Star Trek. So when Star Trek Deep Space Nine did a version of Babylon 5, I invested my time into that. This is before streaming and stuff, It was not easy to binge watch multiple TV shows at the time.
No, there was no binge watching back in the day. That didn't come until the 2000s.
Yeah, so it's an honorable mention. It's the very last on my honorable mentions because I think it deserves that. But for me personally, I enjoyed DS9 better, which is what is on my next honorable mention was DS9. It didn't make my top 5 or my top 10 because I didn't like it as much as the rest of the stuff, but I did enjoy it. I enjoyed some of the characters.
Yeah. Deep Space Nine has a couple of characters I really like. My son is named Dax, based on the character, so you can tell how much I love Star Trek.
Yeah.
But the reality is that Deep Space Nine was my least favorite of all of my Star Trek series.
Yeah.
Before this year.
Before this year.
We'll see where it ends up in time.
The Orville is like my favorite Star Trek series right now.
Are we labeling the Orville as Star Trek?
Look, I even like Enterprise more than Deep Space Nine, but I didn't give Enterprise a honorable mention. Honestly, I just forgot about it when I was making the list.
Deep Space Nine's got its place. I mean, Odo's a fantastic character. Yep. The Ferengi, you get to learn a lot about Ferengi in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
There are some really cool things in this show.
All right, my next honorable mention. This.
Oh, dude, I got to tell you, you had to keep me. I'm like, I wanted to list this so bad. It was a show I never thought I would ever like.
I never thought I would like it either. It was like dude, I remember going to middle school and my little girlfriend at the time being like, "You gotta watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's so good." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not a woman, so I'm not gonna watch that." And then
that is so funny.
I remember so clearly, dude. I was bored. One day I was bored, and there was a replay playing on Channel 5, the Singing Frog channel, and it was playing at 10 o'clock at night. And I watched an episode, and I thought, this main character really bugs me. But all the characters around her are really great. Seth Green, David Brianza, they're all really great. And then I watched the next episode, and the next day. And then I had to figure out when this thing is airing, and I need to make sure I'm watching this every single time, and I just got hooked, man.
Right. Sarah Michelle Gellar was a child actor on a soap opera that my grandmother watched that somehow I always ended up stuck watching. And so when Buffy the Vampire Slayer first came out as a movie, it did not do well. It's a cult classic now, but it did not do well. Then they turned into the TV show, of course, with I think it's Josh Whedon, right?
Joss Whedon is the writer director.
So, of course he's acclaimed now, but so I just found myself, I'm like, oh, Sarah Michelle Gellar I'm watching her. Okay, what is this all about? Because I'm not big on vampires. And she just kicked major butt, man.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I have to admit it.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I gave it an honorable mention because there's no way I'm putting it on my top 10 though. Sorry.
No, can't be. But it was tons of fun.
Next honorable mention, and I gotta say, this show might deserve more. but I have a personal problem with it.
Me too.
Battlestar Galactica was expertly made, expertly written, expertly acted in, but whoever decided that the camera work would be single cam, shaky cam style, gritty nonsense, whoever decided that they would completely change up the actors, they made major mistakes. And the problem was, I'm not even trying to criticize the show, but this style was successful enough to where other shows emulated that style,
yes,
and ruined franchises.
Okay.
So I can't put on my top 10, even though there's a lot of good things about this, because I feel like this show and its success ruined a lot of other good shows.
No, that's a really good point. I have a problem with it for a completely other reason. I was actually stationed in I was in Iraq at the time when this came out, and one of the things that we got to do for fun was this TV show was coming out, and I was really looking forward to it because I was a huge fan of the 1978 Battlestar Galactica TV series. I was a kid, so it was a big deal. I was looking forward to seeing some of my favorite characters like Starbuck, and so when it was going to come out and they were going to show us in the military the first 2 episodes, I think we got to see, I could not get past the fact that Starbuck was a girl.
I had a hard time with that too.
It bothered me. The actress is great, and the actress did a great job.
Kate Sackhoff, yeah.
But I could never get past it because I was so disappointed that it ruined everything. It just ruined the show for me.
Well, I had a very, very similar experience that very first season, but when I realized that the show wasn't about Starbuck this time,
right,
and it was about all the other characters, especially the one right in the center, the Cylon, that's when I was able to accept it and have fun with it.
Yeah, you had to be able to let loose on it, and I think at that time I was engaged in warfare, so I didn't really have time to focus on Battlestar Galactica, and I never really came back to it. It's listed as number 4 on Ranker.com, which is pretty impressive. But I personally just don't want to give it a shake. So
another one of those reasons, though, like, I hate how successful it was because it really bled its style, that shaky, gritty sci-fi, bled into a lot of shows, and it took a decade. It took almost a decade to get past that and get back into real sci-fi again.
No, you're 100% right on that.
I mean, dude, if there's any, I didn't even put it on this list. Stargate Universe was the death of that franchise. I mean, really, Stargate. I mean, it's coming back next year as like a webisode thing, but it died with Stargate Universe because they said, well, let's do a Stargate show where it's has the same exact style and look and everything as Battlestar Galactica, and it ruined the show. It ruined the entire franchise.
Yeah, Edward James Olmos had me liking what I did see of this show, but it just doesn't make my top 10.
Gotcha. All right, honorable mention. This is for all you fanboys out there. Eureka was on.
My gosh.
It was a sci-fi original, one of the very first sci-fi originals. It was about a little town, a hidden town in the middle of America somewhere, where all the biggest, brightest, most the smartest people would live and come up with ways to make the world better. And it was fascinating. I could not put it on my top 10, even though I really wanted to, because there's so many other shows that were just, for me, so much bigger and better. I wouldn't say better, but bigger, like just bigger worlds. But this show has such a warm place in my heart, and it was like, it was made for nerds by nerds kind of a thing. It really did it for me.
Awesome.
I remember they had a cafe in the show. It was a coffee shop called Cafe Diem.
That's awesome.
All right.
Cafe Diem. That's what my tattoo says.
Oh yeah, it's right.
Oh, sorry, it's Carpe Diem.
Carpe Diem. Yeah, it was right. Carpe Diem. All right. Orville was my next honorable mention. I didn't put on my top 5. I have a lot of honorable mentions. I just realized that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. You're loaded with them.
Yeah.
But
I really want to put Orville in
bro?
top 5, but I thought it wouldn't be fair. We're in the 10th episode. That wouldn't be fair.
You know, it's not fair. I mean, I'm not even sure it's fair to put it as honorable mention yet. I mean, only because, you know, I love the Orville. I'm really enjoying watching it, but I cannot classify it until I've got at least 2 seasons under my belt.
I hear you. But I had to put it on there because every single week I'm looking forward to the Orville.
You're liking it that much.
Listen,
okay, that's cool.
When this thing breaks in a couple weeks, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Hey, I have no doubt it's going to be on this list in a very short time.
All right. Torchwood made my honorable mention list.
Interesting.
Because it deserves it. Dang it. It deserves it. If you like Doctor Who, you'll like Torchwood. I actually prefer...
Not true.
Okay. Well,
I like Doctor Who, and I don't like Torchwood.
Okay.
There you go.
I like Torchwood a lot. It made an honorable mention.
It made Brian's honorable mention.
Yes.
Definitely did not. It
What
didn't
about
even make my top
Farscape,
20.
Shane?
Like Farscape. Farscape's a good show.
Did it make your honorable mentions?
It would have, yeah, had I been able to list 25 like you.
I'm so
Absolutely.
cheating right now, guys. I'm sorry.
He's so cheating, man. He's talking about all the shows he want to talk about. Farscape's a great show. Ben Browder, absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Currently listed as number 10 on Ranker.com. It deserves to be mentioned.
deserves it, man. All right. Number 5 on my list. We're at the top 5. Number 5 on my list is Star Trek TOS.
Tell me what you liked about that series and what you didn't like, and where that rests for you.
Star Trek TOS was the first Star Trek I ever saw. I know I should have watched TNG first, but I didn't. I remember watching Star Trek The Next Generation with our dad. You know, he thought, he's a very conservative guy. He thought it was very wholesome television. So we watched that together, that and Star Wars. And the only times I ever remember watching TV with my dad was Star Wars and Star Trek TOS until I was in my preteens, going into my teenage years, is when the movies started coming out for The Next Generation. And when we saw Generations, Dad and I started switching it up. We started watching TNG. I think
okay.
My TV viewing was sort of tied to him until I was a teenager. I had to watch whatever he wanted to watch.
Yeah, mine as well. But see, instead of getting to watch that, I only got to watch TBS.
Oh.
So the Trinity broadcast.
Yeah,
that was pretty much it.
Yeah, we watched a lot of that, guys.
He hadn't gotten to the place.
You mean?
Is it TBN?
It's TBN, Trinity Broadcasting Network. Oh,
that's
God.
right.
Goodness.
That's right. He hadn't graduated to some of the cooler shows until after I was not there.
I remember that. Yeah. Probably because I could not watch TBN.
Yeah.
But TOS for me, I loved the series, and the reason it's number 5 and not higher on my top 5 is mainly because of shows that are coming up on my list that hit me when I was emotionally mature to understand the characters and really get into it. Now, later on in my life, when I started reading the TOS books, I got more and more into Kirk and Spock and all that. But when I was emotionally maturing, it was around Next Generation and all these other shows that we're going to talk about pretty soon. And so emotionally, this was lower on my list, even if it has an extreme amount of nostalgia for me. These other shows just have more, and I found them more entertaining after the fact. Now,
that totally makes sense.
Without TOS, none of these other shows exist. So
that's true.
With that argument, it should be number 1. But I knew it was your number 1, so I decided.
But it's also Brian's top 5, so I get that.
Yeah. All right, number 4 is Voyager. Yes, Voyager beat TOS. Why?
Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, no, it's personal. So you tell me.
I'll tell you why. When I started watching Voyager, it had this. I had already watched TOS. I had already watched TNG. I had already there was already a version of Star Trek that I knew, and what Voyager did was it took Star Trek, and it took away all the safety protocols. It's like you're on the holodeck, no safety protocols, no Federation, no base. I'm safe, you know. and it changed it gave me the same classic Star Trek, but in a different perception of it, almost like still Adventure of the Week kind of thing, but much dire straits. It had more of a realism to it, to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good description of that show.
Plus 7.
And why it was so cool.
So, I was like 15 when this came out. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I actually didn't get to watch Star Trek Voyager, from week to week to week, because I was already in the Navy when this show came out, and you can't put anything on a timer in the Navy. But when I was over in I think in Hong Kong. No, I was in Malaysia, and they were actually selling Star Trek Voyager box sets of all the seasons, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And they were dirt cheap, right? Because of course everything is a bunch of knockoffs over there. So, but it was so cool. I actually bought them. I bought every season.
Oh wow.
And then when we were back on the ship, I had this little DVD player, and I was able to watch them at night. Half of them didn't play, but it was the first time I actually got to watch the entire show from beginning to end.
Dude, so your first real binge watch was Star Trek Voyager.
It was my first binge watch.
No wonder why it made your list.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3 on my list is Doctor Who.
This was a tough one for me. I'm really curious to hear why you love it so much, because I wanted to talk about this. It's an honorable mention for me.
Well, I have a question. Why did you not like it as much as I did?
You know what it was for me is I didn't make it all the way through Matt Smith. And because I didn't make it all the way through Matt Smith and wasn't interested enough to get into Peter Capaldi, I could not rank it, even though the episodes, the seasons, when you got David Tennant and Matt Smith, that's some of my favorite sci-fi. It's some of my favorite. I love it, absolutely love it. But I just couldn't put the whole body of work in it, so I couldn't put it in my top 5.
Yeah. I just double-checked my list. I'm sorry, Shane, but this is not my number 3.
Oh, this is just another honorable mention for you?
No, this is actually my number 5, and Voyager and TOS were my 6 and 7s.
What is up with you, man?
I am so sorry, man.
I told you early, you can't cheat like this.
I made a mistake, okay?
I told Brian before this, guys. I told him, I said, dude, do not be piling up all your shows, because I know you got a lot of them.
Look, okay, right, this is the first time we've done this. We're using this software with the slideshow thing, and it's confusing to me.
I cut you some slack. I love you, man.
So I'm sorry. This was number 5. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're in his top 5.
Okay.
So TOS and Voyager didn't even make his top 5.
TOS and Voyager were in top 5. They were technically
number
6
5.
and 7. All right. So Doctor
Next time you're gonna have to put little numbers. Number 5.
Yes. Doctor Who is number 5 for me. I never watched the original Doctor Who, nor do I. I don't think I'm ever going to watch it. I've tried to watch it.
It's tough.
The graphics and everything is just. It's just. Not, I can't handle it.
Yeah, if you think TOS is hard to watch some early Doctor Who.
It's hard. But I started watching Doctor Who in 2005, I think. And someone said you got to watch it. It's great, and I'm like, I've seen Doctor Who. I'm not interested. But New Who was different. The graphics were a little better. The writing was cleaner. It was easier to follow the story. And that first season was a little bit hard for me to get behind. It was a little new to me, a little, odd, and graphics purposely being cheesy kind of thing. But
Chris Eccleston,
yeah. But once you got the story and you realized what it was about, it had such a huge heart behind it. And there's so much heart related to Doctor Who,
yeah.
So that's why it's my number 5.
All right.
Okay, number 4 on my list is Stargate Atlantis.
Oh, that got an honorable mention from me too, man. So
yeah, so I want to talk about.
I love Stargate Atlantis.
It's my number 4, and it was your honorable mention. Why is it your honorable mention and not in your top 5?
Well, you saw my top 5. I mean, how do I get rid of the original series? How do I get rid of It's tough. I mean, and even ranking this one. I mean, I had Stargate SG-1 as number 5, but I could argue that I enjoyed Atlantis as much as I enjoyed SG-1, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It ranks right up there in probably my top 7. Jason Momoa. Look at Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa, Aquaman
You know,
himself.
I mean, I love most of these characters here.
Yep.
Greatly, and I would argue that probably not the Colonel there in the middle, but
John
his
Shepard.
science. Yeah, but just to his left there, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
I don't remember the actor's name, but the character's name is Rodney.
Oh, Rodney. He was in a movie called The Cube, and that I had seen before I ever saw this, and I liked his character. And he is a fantastic actor to watch. Would watch him in anything. One of my favorite sci-fi actors.
I'm with you right there. And we talked about Robert Picardo last week. He's great. So he's my number 5. And I've binge watched Atlantis like 6 times. I really enjoy it. Okay, number 3 on my list is Firefly. Now, Shane,
Okay.
I know you have not really seen Firefly, which is why you didn't rank it.
Well, it's ranked number 1 on Ranker.com, so I know it's a really great show. And I saw the Firefly movie. So, yeah. So the reality is I have not spent enough time with that to be able to rank it.
Okay, so the Firefly movie was called Serenity.
Right.
And I actually watched Serenity before watching Firefly. When I watched Serenity, I was like, wow, I need more of this. And when I discovered that there's a TV show attached to it, I went and binge watched. I went and binge watched it, and it's just, this universe is so great. It really deserved more than 1 season. It only got 1 season because the studio made mistakes and eventually canned it, and the leadership at the time, it was all behind the scenes office politics that canned this amazing television show. All right, number 2 on my list, everybody, we're almost done, is Stargate SG-1.
So it got to number 2 for you, huh?
It got to number 2. I couldn't give it number 1. I couldn't. I wanted to, but then I realized that TNG is my number 1. So back to SG-1. The reason I love SG-1, it had a Star Trek appeal to it. Star Trek sliders. When I watched the movie, I was just entranced by the idea of the pyramids and the Stargate system. And when SG-1 came out, it expanded this universe and gave me characters led by Richard Dean Anderson, which I grew up watching him on why did I just forget what MacGyver? Thank you.
MacGyver, yeah, MacGyver.
And his character is just so pure, and it's really good. If you haven't seen SG-1, guys, you need to go watch it. If you haven't seen SG-1 in Atlantis, I envy you, because you can watch SG-1 in Atlantis, and you have a year of entertainment.
Yeah, that's what he told me, actually. What's funny, when I started watching, he was jealous of the fact that I was going to get to go back and watch these shows for the first time. And now I can say the same thing Brian said to me. Yes, I'm jealous that you guys get to go back and watch Stargate SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis for the first time, because it's totally worth it. Absolutely fun.
So good.
Fun science fiction.
Okay, and I already leaked it, but number 1 on my list is Stargate: The Next Generation.
Yeah, Stargate: The Next Generation. That's what you said.
I did.
Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's like, listen, he only put Star Trek: The Next Generation as his number 1 because he knows he can't put Stargate SG-1 as his number 1. I'm telling you right now. He does love Star Trek, but he loves Stargate SG-1. So, but no.
I just got caught, man.
Let's hear it, bro. Let's hear it.
I meant Star Trek. Listen, I do love Stargate, but I can't give it a number 1 slot over Star Trek, because the reason Stargate exists is because Star Trek exists.
That's right. You were right, sir.
So I have to give. So at this point, for my number 1, I said, what was my favorite, aka the best, Star Trek series, and I selected TNG out of that list for my number 1.
Oh wow, okay.
And they're all good.
And
it's really
you're
hard.
not wrong.
It's really hard to make that determination. I mean,
this show could easily be labeled as a #1 sci-fi series. No problem whatsoever. I mean, there's no disrespect or craziness suggesting this, and I don't think anybody who knows science fiction would say this isn't in the running for one of the top TV shows.
Right. And if you don't know why, this is my #1 and a lot of people's #1, you should probably watch it. Which means because I don't think you haven't seen it if you can't at least understand why it's my #1. Captain Picard, Patrick Stewart is one of the finest actors of our generation, and he's surrounded by a supporting cast that just sort of holds him up and puts him up on this pedestal. And the main character is definitely, if I had to pick a main character, it would definitely be Patrick Stewart, who is just an amazing actor, and the writing is good, and they use this universe that was already sort of settled by TOS to create just amazing television. Like Shane said, that episode where he lived an entire lifetime was, to me, the most profound episode of television in history.
Yeah, guys. I mean, Patrick Stewart was in Excalibur. Patrick Stewart was in Dune. I mean, Patrick Stewart's an amazing actor. He's probably one of the most amazing actors to ever be in a Star Trek series or any sci-fi series, to be honest with you.
I agree.
So he's definitely Sir Patrick Stewart for a reason.
And that's it, my friends. That is #1. I'm going to leave that slide up there in honor of Star Trek Next Generation. And we got to tell you, tomorrow we are filming some Christmas stuff. And we're going to be putting out a bunch of cool IRL stuff that hopefully will make you laugh. And we'll be back on Wednesday for The Flash, Thursday for Survivor, and Friday for the Orville. Do not forget, the Orville only has a couple more weeks. So we're going to be going into a dead zone pretty soon, where there's it's dark and there's no comedy.
Hey, you missed one of my things, man.
Which one?
I feel obligated to mention it since you got to mention so many of your honorable mentions.
I did.
But you missed one of my 3 honorable mentions.
Talk to me.
Which was the X-Files.
Oh, I did miss that.
And the fact that we don't talk about the X-Files on the best sci-fi shows of all time, it's really hard.
No. Yeah, you're right.
We got to at least mention it.
No, that's not fair. And where is how do I not have a slide for this? I actually remember getting a slide, but I guess...
Did you? But, David Duchovny, I never called him David Duchovny. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson made for some of the best paranoid TV of all time, man. I absolutely loved the X-Files, and I'm excited, that it's returning. You got it? There it is. Okay.
Yes, the X-Files.
My honorable mention...
and you deserve that, man. I had the only reason I didn't even list it was, I was thinking sort of inside the box for sci-fi and didn't even consider it until I saw it on your list.
Okay, gotcha.
I love the X-Files too. I love the whole Freak of the Week thing. Supernatural, the show which I adore, wouldn't exist without the X-Files. The X-Files was pretty much a template for this for that CW show. X-Files is great, and when it comes back, we're definitely going to review it, right, Shane?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the X-Files return. I don't know if everybody else is looking forward to it, but I am too. I think there's one other show that we have to at least mention that that for any other reason than it was extraordinarily famous this time, but the TV show Lost. I just want to make a mention for that because
I want to mention it, bro.
I know why you don't want to mention it, but I got to mention it. I got to mention it because he doesn't want to mention it.
Fine.
Because Lost was the hottest TV show, one of the hottest TV shows ever on TV. But because they jacked the ending of it, they built up this entire world and everything, and then kind of let you to figure it out for yourself. People let it down. But honestly, Lost definitely should be an honorable mention of TV shows.
Yeah, an honorable mention on what not to waste your time on, right?
You don't want to waste your time watching it if you didn't originally. But if you were one of the first people that watched it, I would like to recognize you as being one of those people who got screwed.
You poor bastard.
And we feel for you.
When I got to the ending of that show, I remember watching it live, dude. I was such a Lost fan. And
everybody was.
And I'm like, no, I mean, what are they going to do? How are they going to clean this up? How are they going to finish this show without disappointing me? They only have an hour. It must be a 2-hour episode. And
right.
no, I was right. They disappointed everybody. Everybody.
They did.
It was so bad. I cannot believe that is one of the biggest bait and switches pile of flaming garbage.
The shows don't usually make it that long that happens to. You know, it was the first TV show that created so many plot points that they realized there's no way they can tie them all together and give you what you want. And they knew it a long time before they finished it and just took you on the ride anyways.
And they took that easy way out, and they were like,
right.
Oh yeah, they're all dead. Oh, really? Really?
Of shows made, it's definitely one of those. We mentioned so many others. I just had to throw it out there. But X-Files was the important one I wanted to get back to.
Okay.
And I'm done.
All right, I'm done too. You're right. That's it, guys. Join us. We're doing IRL stuff tomorrow. Join us on Wednesday for the Flash review, Thursday for Survivor, and Friday for the Orville. And we'll see you then.
All right, guys. We'll catch you later. Have a good week.